Welcome to our channel. We are thrilled to have you here as we embark on an extraordinary journey back in time to explore one of the most magnificent civilizations the world has ever known, the Roman Empire. For centuries, Rome has fascinated historians, scholars, and curious minds alike. Its story is not just about wars, emperors, and conquests. It is a testament to human ambition, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of greatness. Today, we invite you to dive deep into the rise of Rome, to understand how a small city-state on the banks of the Tiber River grew into an empire that shaped the course of history, influencing law, architecture, culture, and governance for millennia to come. Our story begins around 753 BCE, in a time when Italy was a mosaic of tribes, each living in scattered villages, often at odds with one another. Among them, a humble settlement on 7 hills would eventually become the heart of an empire that would dominate Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. The early Romans were a people of extraordinary resilience and ingenuity. They combined practical military strategies with clever political alliances, gradually transforming their small city into a republic that would inspire generations. The Roman Republic, established in 509 BCE, was a revolutionary concept in governance. Unlike the monarchies and tribal chieftains of the time, Rome experimented with a system that balanced power between elected officials, the Senate, and the people. This innovative model of government allowed Rome to grow steadily while maintaining internal stability. It was a delicate balance, a constant negotiation between ambition and responsibility, and it was this political structure that laid the foundation for Rome's expansion. Military prowess was another cornerstone of Rome's rise. The Roman legions were disciplined, strategic, and incredibly adaptive. They perfected formations, weaponry, and siege techniques that gave them an edge over rival tribes and neighboring states. The Roman army was not just a fighting force, it was a symbol of Rome's values: discipline, loyalty, and courage. Battles such as the conquest of the Etruscans and the wars with the Samnites showcased not only Rome's military strength, but also its ability to absorb and integrate different cultures into its growing empire. Trade and infrastructure played a pivotal role. Rome's engineers built roads that connected cities, facilitating commerce and the movement of armies. Aqueducts brought fresh water to urban centers, while public forums became spaces for debate, commerce, and civic life. The Romans understood that a strong empire required not just military might, but also technological innovation and social cohesion. Their roads, bridges, and public buildings were more than structures. They were symbols of an emerging civilization that valued progress, efficiency, and grandeur. Culture and religion intertwined with politics, reinforcing the power of Rome. The Romans were deeply influenced by the Greeks, adopting their gods, philosophy, and artistic styles, yet they adapted these elements to serve their own society. Public festivals, religious rituals, and civic ceremonies were not mere traditions. They were instruments of unity, shaping the identity of Rome and its citizens. Education, rhetoric, and law were equally prized, producing leaders who were not only warriors, but also statesmen, thinkers, and diplomats. As Rome expanded, it faced challenges that tested its resilience. Conflicts with neighboring states, internal political struggles, and social inequalities threatened the stability of the Republic. Yet the Roman people persisted. Figures like Cincinnatus exemplified Roman virtues: selflessness, duty, and service to the Republic. These stories of ordinary citizens performing extraordinary deeds inspired loyalty and fostered a sense of shared purpose. Rome was not just an empire built by generals and emperors. It was a civilization nurtured by the collective effort and ambition of its people. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome had transformed from a regional power into a dominant force in the Mediterranean. The Punic Wars against Carthage marked a turning point, demonstrating Rome's strategic genius, determination, and relentless pursuit of supremacy. Hannibal's daring campaigns challenged Rome, yet the resilience of the Roman Republic prevailed, ultimately leading to the destruction of Carthage and the expansion of Roman influence across the Mediterranean basin. These victories were not just military achievements, they symbolized the rise of a civilization destined to leave an indelible mark on human history. Through triumphs and trials, the early Roman Republic laid the groundwork for what would become one of history's greatest empires. Its story is a reminder that greatness is rarely instantaneous. It is forged through vision, perseverance, and the ability to adapt in the face of adversity. As we journey through the rise and fall of Rome, we will explore the stories of leaders and citizens, of battles won and lost, of innovations that changed the world, and of lessons that continue to resonate even today. So, stay with us as we unravel the fascinating saga of Rome, a civilization that began as a humble city on 7 hills and rose to shape the destiny of nations. This is not just history, it is a tale of ambition, courage, and the enduring spirit of human achievement. In the next segment, we will dive deeper into the golden age of the Roman Republic, exploring its political brilliance, cultural innovations, and the relentless drive that propelled Rome towards greatness. By the 1st century BCE, Rome had grown far beyond its humble beginnings. Its territories spanned vast regions of Europe, North Africa, and parts of the Middle East. Yet with this expansion came new challenges. Wealth accumulated by the elite, growing inequality among the classes, and the constant pressure of managing distant provinces strained the Republic's political system. Senators wielded significant power, often prioritizing personal gain over the common good, while ordinary citizens grew restless, seeking reforms and opportunities to share in Rome's prosperity. It was in this volatile environment that Gaius Julius Caesar emerged. Born into a patrician family in 100 BCE, Caesar was ambitious, charismatic, and politically astute. From a young age, he understood the importance of alliances, public perception, and military success. His early career saw him navigating the treacherous waters of Roman politics, forming strategic alliances, and leveraging his talents as an orator and leader to gain influence. Caesar was not only a military mind, but also a politician who recognized that power in Rome was as much about public support as it was about Senate approval. Caesar's military campaigns were instrumental in securing his fame and authority. His conquest of Gaul, modern-day France and Belgium, was a masterclass in strategy, logistics, and psychological warfare. He expanded Rome's territories significantly, bringing immense wealth and slaves into the Republic. The Gallic Wars were not merely battles, they were a demonstration of Caesar's genius in inspiring loyalty among his troops and striking fear into his enemies. Each victory solidified his reputation, earning him both admiration and envy in Rome. Yet Caesar's rise was without controversy. The Senate, wary of his growing power, often attempted to curb his influence. Political rivals, including Pompey and Crassus, his former allies in the First Triumvirate, began to view him as a threat. The tension reached its peak in 49 BCE when Caesar crossed the Rubicon River with his army, uttering the legendary phrase, "Alea iacta est," the die is cast. This bold move marked the start of a civil war that would forever alter the course of Roman history. Crossing the Rubicon was more than a military maneuver. It was a defiance of the Republic's authority and a declaration that Caesar would not be restrained by politics alone. The ensuing civil war between Caesar and the senatorial forces led by Pompey was a dramatic period of battles, shifting loyalties, and political upheaval. Caesar's strategic brilliance shone through in campaigns such as the Battle of Pharsalus, where he decisively defeated Pompey despite being outnumbered. His ability to adapt, inspire his men, and execute complex military strategies showcased why he is remembered as one of history's greatest commanders. Yet victory was not just measured on the battlefield. Caesar understood that winning the hearts and minds of the Roman populace was equally crucial. He implemented policies to alleviate debt, reformed the calendar, and extended citizenship to conquered peoples, strengthening his political base. However, Caesar's concentration of power and unprecedented rise alarmed many in the Senate.
They feared that the Republic, long governed by checks and balances, was being transformed into a dictatorship. The tension culminated on the Ides of March 44 BCE, when Caesar was assassinated by a group of senators led by Brutus and Cassius. This dramatic act was intended to restore the Republic, but instead it plunged Rome into further chaos, igniting another series of civil wars. Caesar's assassination symbolized both the fragility of political systems and the peril of unchecked ambition. The civil wars that followed Caesar's death eventually led to the rise of Octavian, later known as Augustus, and the end of the Roman Republic. These conflicts were a turning point, demonstrating that Rome's strength lay not only in its military might, but also in the delicate balance of power, public loyalty, and governance. The struggles between populist leaders and the Senate highlighted the challenges of managing an empire whose influence stretched across continents, a lesson that resonates through history. Through Julius Caesar's life, we witness the convergence of military genius, political cunning, and personal ambition. His story is not merely one of conquest, but also a reflection of human nature, the complexities of leadership, and the consequences of challenging established systems. Caesar's legacy influenced Roman governance, inspired military tactics for centuries, and remains a subject of fascination for historians and storytellers alike. As we conclude this segment, we see that the rise of Rome was not a linear journey. It was filled with conflicts, ambitious leaders, and pivotal moments that shaped the Republic's transformation into an empire. In the next segment, we will explore the golden age of the Roman Empire under Augustus, the consolidation of power, the expansion of culture, and the societal innovations that defined Rome at its peak.
After the turmoil of civil wars and the assassination of Julius Caesar, Rome stood at a crossroads. The Republic had been shaken to its core, and the question remained, who would lead this vast empire into stability and prosperity? From the ashes of chaos rose Gaius Octavius, later known as Augustus, a man whose vision, strategy, and political skill would transform Rome forever. Augustus was not only a shrewd politician, but also a master of perception, carefully presenting himself as the restorer of the Republic while consolidating power in his own hands. Augustus understood that Rome's greatness depended on stability, and stability depended on the people's support. He implemented reforms across administration, finance, and the military. Provinces were reorganized under trusted governors, taxes were standardized, and a permanent standing army ensured security along the empire's vast borders. Unlike the chaotic rule of warlords, Augustus's governance was marked by discipline, efficiency, and foresight. His policies strengthened Rome's core, allowing trade, culture, and infrastructure to flourish. One of Augustus's most enduring achievements was the establishment of the Pax Romana, a period of relative peace that lasted over 2 centuries. During this time, Rome experienced unprecedented economic growth, territorial expansion, and cultural development. Roads, aqueducts, and cities flourished, connecting the empire from Britain to Egypt, Spain to Mesopotamia. These achievements were not merely practical, they symbolized the empire's power and ingenuity. Travel and communication improved, commerce expanded, and the movement of ideas fostered a sense of unity across diverse peoples and regions. Augustus also understood the power of culture and symbolism. Public buildings, temples, and monuments were erected to glorify Rome and its leaders. Art and literature were patronized to promote Roman values and the emperor's vision. Augustus's reign saw poets like Virgil, Horace, and Ovid immortalize Rome's glory, weaving stories that celebrated its origins, triumphs, and divine destiny. These cultural works reinforced the legitimacy of Augustus's rule, inspiring pride and loyalty among citizens. The emperor's careful balancing act between authority and tradition was key to his success. He maintained the appearance of the Republic's institutions, the Senate, magistracies, and assemblies, while effectively controlling their decisions. Augustus was a master of political theater, projecting humility while exercising ultimate power. This subtle approach allowed him to avoid the fate of Julius Caesar, who had been seen as overtly ambitious, and it established a model for leadership that would influence subsequent emperors.
Rome's peak under Augustus was also marked by expansion and security. Campaigns in Germania, Hispania, and the eastern provinces extended Rome's borders, while diplomatic alliances, client kingdoms, and military garrisons stabilized these regions. The empire was not only protected from external threats, but also integrated, creating a network of cultures, economies, and societies that contributed to Rome's strength. Citizens and conquered peoples alike participated in an interconnected world, sharing language, trade, and cultural practices that reinforced the empire's cohesion. Society and law flourished during this era. Augustus reformed legal codes, standardized governance, and promoted moral legislation aimed at strengthening families, marriage, and civic duty. He believed that the empire's longevity depended on disciplined, virtuous citizens, and his reforms reflected a careful attempt to shape public behavior while ensuring loyalty to the state. The balance of personal freedom with civic responsibility created a framework for Roman life that endured long after his reign. Economically, Rome prospered under Augustus. Trade routes expanded across the Mediterranean and beyond, bringing luxury goods, raw materials, and wealth into the empire. Cities thrived, agriculture stabilized, and infrastructure investments improved the quality of life. These conditions fostered social mobility, cultural exchange, and urban growth, allowing Rome to project its influence and power far beyond its borders. The prosperity of the Pax Romana was not accidental. It was a product of strategic governance, foresight, and relentless attention to stability. The era of Augustus set the stage for centuries of imperial rule. His methods of leadership, reforms, and vision for Rome created a model of governance admired and emulated throughout history. Under his guidance, Rome became more than a city or a republic. It was a civilization whose achievements in law, culture, architecture, and military strategy would leave an enduring legacy. The empire's peak was not only a period of territorial expansion, but also a time of human achievement, where innovation, art, and social organization converged to create a remarkable chapter in world history. As we reflect on Augustus's reign, it becomes clear that Rome's greatness was not the result of chance, but of deliberate action, strategic thinking, and the ability to inspire and govern millions. In the next segment, we will explore the empire's continued expansion, the challenges faced by future emperors, and the gradual pressures that would eventually test the limits of Rome's power.
As the Roman Empire stretched its boundaries from the windswept coasts of Britain to the sun-baked deserts of Egypt, it became clear that Rome's strength was not only in its armies, but also in its ability to integrate diverse peoples into a cohesive society. The expansion of Rome was both a feat of military strategy and political ingenuity, a complex process of conquest, diplomacy, and cultural assimilation that allowed the empire to maintain control over vast territories for centuries. The Roman military was the backbone of this expansion. Legions, meticulously trained and rigorously disciplined, were deployed across distant provinces to defend the empire, quell rebellions, and extend Roman influence. Each legion was composed of soldiers who were not just warriors, but also builders, engineers, and administrators. Roads, bridges, and fortifications were constructed as the army marched, creating infrastructure that connected remote regions to the heart of the empire. Military campaigns were carefully planned, often taking years of preparation and intelligence gathering, and the Roman strategy was a combination of direct confrontation, siege warfare, and psychological tactics designed to intimidate and pacify opponents. One of the empire's most remarkable expansions occurred in the provinces of Gaul, Hispania, and the eastern Mediterranean. In Gaul, Rome faced fierce resistance from tribal coalitions, but strategic diplomacy and tactical brilliance allowed them to gradually subdue the region. Hispania, with its rugged terrain and independent-minded inhabitants, required years of campaigns, yet it eventually became a loyal province, contributing soldiers, resources, and wealth to the empire. In the east, Rome encountered sophisticated civilizations such as the Greeks, Egyptians, and Persians. Here, conquest was accompanied by negotiation, alliances, and incorporation of local elites into the Roman administration.
These strategies ensured not only territorial control, but also cultural integration. The integration of diverse cultures was a hallmark of Rome's governance. Rather than imposing uniformity, Rome often adopted a policy of pragmatism, allowing local customs, religions, and governance structures to continue while overlaying Roman law, taxation, and administrative systems. This approach created a sense of inclusion and loyalty among conquered peoples, who could participate in the empire's political and economic life while maintaining aspects of their own identity. The result was a mosaic of cultures, bound together under the banner of Rome, sharing language, trade, and legal frameworks that fostered stability across vast distances. Daily life in the Roman Empire reflected both this cultural integration and the empire's remarkable organizational skill. Urban centers were hubs of activity, with bustling markets, grand forums, and public baths, serving as places for commerce, socializing, and civic engagement. Roads and aqueducts facilitated the flow of goods, water, and information, connecting cities and provinces in a network that was unprecedented in the ancient world. Citizens of Rome enjoyed amenities that reflected the empire's wealth and sophistication, from theaters and amphitheaters for entertainment to libraries and schools for education. Social hierarchy played a significant role in shaping daily life. Patricians, wealthy landowners, and influential officials enjoyed privileges, political power, and access to luxury, while plebeians and freedmen engaged in trades, crafts, and agriculture, forming the backbone of the economy. Slaves, though deprived of freedom, were integral to the functioning of households, farms, and public projects. Despite these divisions, the empire's legal and social systems provided a framework that allowed commerce, civic participation, and personal advancement, reflecting a complex balance between authority and opportunity. Religion and culture were deeply intertwined with daily life. Temples, rituals, and festivals marked the rhythm of the year, while public ceremonies reinforced the authority of the emperor and the values of Roman society. Citizens celebrated victories, honored ancestors, and participated in rites that connected them to the divine and the state. Artistic expression, from sculpture and frescoes to literature and music, reflected both Roman ideals and the influences of conquered cultures. This blending of traditions enriched the empire, creating a dynamic society that valued innovation, beauty, and intellectual achievement. The economic vitality of Rome was closely linked to its military and cultural reach. Trade flourished across the Mediterranean and beyond, bringing grain from Egypt, olive oil from Hispania, wine from Gaul, and exotic goods from the East. Markets in Rome, Alexandria, Antioch, and Carthage buzzed with activity, as merchants, artisans, and farmers exchanged goods that connected distant corners of the empire. Coinage standardized transactions, while legal protections encouraged trade and investment. The wealth generated by commerce and conquest funded monumental architecture, public works, and the military itself, creating a cycle that reinforced Rome's power and influence. Education and civic life were also central to Rome's identity. Citizens were trained in rhetoric, philosophy, and law, preparing them to participate in public life, manage estates, or serve in the military. Civic duty was emphasized as a cornerstone of Roman identity, and participation in political, religious, and social institutions was considered both a privilege and an obligation. Festivals, games, and public assemblies provided entertainment and fostered community, reinforcing the bonds between citizens and their city. Yet, beneath this remarkable facade, challenges persisted. Rebellion, corruption, and economic disparities occasionally threatened stability, reminding both leaders and citizens that governance over such a vast empire required constant vigilance, adaptation, and strategic foresight. Rome's ability to address these challenges while maintaining cohesion was a testament to its administrative genius and the resilience of its institutions. As Rome expanded, integrated cultures, and developed a sophisticated society, it set new standards for human civilization. Its roads, laws, cities, and cultural achievements became the foundations upon which future empires would build. The lessons of this era, from military strategy and political governance to urban planning and cultural diplomacy, continue to resonate today. In the next segment, we will explore the challenges Rome faced in maintaining such a vast empire, including internal conflicts, succession crises, and the pressures that would eventually signal the beginning of decline.
As the Roman Empire reached the height of its power and glory, it also began to encounter the complex challenges that come with ruling an immense and diverse territory. The very factors that had made Rome successful, its vast wealth, military prowess, and complex bureaucracy, also planted the seeds for internal difficulties that would later undermine stability. The empire's administration had grown highly sophisticated, but it was increasingly burdened by the pressures of governance, the ambitions of elites, and the difficulty of maintaining loyalty across distant provinces. Corruption and political intrigue became significant issues in the later stages of the early empire. Senators and provincial governors often pursued personal gain over public duty, enriching themselves at the expense of the state. Bribes, favoritism, and embezzlement became commonplace, eroding public trust in institutions. Even as Rome projected power across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, these internal weaknesses highlighted the vulnerability of a system built on human ambition and ambition's occasional disregard for the common good. Succession was another source of tension. Unlike modern states with formal mechanisms for leadership transition, the Roman Empire relied heavily on the emperor's ability to designate heirs or for political consensus to emerge among elites. This often led to instability when emperors died without a clear successor. Civil wars, assassinations, and power struggles erupted as ambitious generals or influential senators sought to seize control. The empire's stability was repeatedly tested by these succession crises, showing how the centralization of power in a single individual could be both a source of strength and a potential catalyst for chaos. Economic pressures also began to surface. Maintaining the empire's military and bureaucratic apparatus required enormous resources, and taxation often fell unevenly on provinces and citizens. Wealth disparities grew, creating tension between the elite and the common people. While Rome remained a hub of commerce and culture, the burdens of administration, defense, and public works sometimes strained the empire's finances, exposing vulnerabilities that external enemies could exploit. Military challenges were not limited to expansion. As borders extended across vast distances, defending the empire became increasingly complex. Legions stationed far from Rome often had to contend with local uprisings, incursions from external tribes, and logistical difficulties in maintaining supply lines. The loyalty of soldiers was sometimes divided between allegiance to the emperor and attachment to their generals, further complicating governance. These pressures foreshadowed the empire's eventual struggle to maintain cohesion in the face of both internal and external threats. As social tensions also played a role in early signs of decline. The divide between the wealthy elite and the ordinary citizen deepened over time, despite attempts at social reforms. The urban poor often depended on grain doles, public entertainment, and patronage, creating a reliance on imperial largesse that could be manipulated for political purposes. In the provinces, local populations sometimes resisted Roman authority, leading to rebellions that required military suppression. The empire's ability to manage these tensions was critical to its continued stability, but each challenge revealed cracks in the foundation of Roman governance. The complexity of governing a multicultural empire introduced additional pressures. While Rome had skillfully integrated diverse peoples and traditions, maintaining loyalty among these populations required constant attention. Laws had to be adapted to accommodate local customs, religious practices needed to be respected, and local elites had to be incorporated into the administration. Failure to balance these factors could lead to unrest, and occasional revolts in provinces such as Judea, Britannia, and Gaul demonstrated how tenuous Rome's control could be when local grievances were ignored or mismanaged. Despite these challenges, Rome continued to innovate and adapt. Emperors implemented reforms to strengthen the army, stabilize the economy, and address social tensions. Public works projects, legal codifications, and administrative restructuring were deployed to maintain order and cohesion. Yet the very need for these interventions underscored the pressures facing the empire. A state that had once seemed invincible was increasingly reliant on careful management to sustain its vast reach. The early signs of decline were subtle but significant.
Political assassinations, economic pressures, military overextension, and social disparities hinted that the empire's golden age was not eternal. Rome's ability to project power across continents remained impressive, yet these internal challenges revealed that even the mightiest civilizations were vulnerable to the cumulative effects of human ambition, mismanagement, and systemic weaknesses. As we reflect on this period, it becomes clear that the Roman Empire's strength lay not only in conquest, but also in its capacity to confront and adapt to internal challenges. The lessons from this era resonate through history. Even the most powerful states must balance authority, justice, and the needs of their people to endure. In the next segment, we will explore Rome's struggles with external invasions, the pressures of defending its borders, and the eventual confrontations with barbarian tribes that foreshadowed a new chapter in the empire's history.
As the Roman Empire approached the later centuries of its existence, the pressures from beyond its borders grew increasingly severe. For centuries, Rome had expanded into territories that stretched from the Atlantic shores of Britain to the sands of Egypt and the banks of the Euphrates. This vastness, while a symbol of its power, also made the empire difficult to defend. The legions, once invincible symbols of Roman dominance, now faced formidable threats from groups that had once been considered peripheral or inferior. Among the most persistent and dangerous of these adversaries were the barbarian tribes beyond the northern and eastern frontiers. The term barbarian was a Roman designation for peoples considered uncivilized or foreign, yet many of these groups, such as the Goths, Vandals, Huns, and Franks, were organized, strategic, and highly capable in warfare. These tribes did not merely raid Roman territories, they often sought permanent settlement or control of land. Early encounters were sporadic, but over time, repeated incursions highlighted weaknesses in the empire's defensive systems. Roman leaders, who had relied on the disciplined legions and strategic fortifications, found themselves increasingly challenged by the mobility, adaptability, and sheer numbers of these external forces. The empire's northern frontiers along the Rhine and Danube rivers became focal points of military attention. Rome had long relied on fortified walls, watchtowers, and garrisoned legions to maintain control, but the sheer length of these borders made comprehensive defense nearly impossible. Conflicts with the Goths, for instance, revealed how nimble and resilient these tribes could be. In 376 CE, a massive migration of the Visigoths into Roman territory led to tensions over land and resources, eventually culminating in the catastrophic Battle of Adrianople in 378 CE. The Roman army, once supreme, suffered a devastating defeat, with Emperor Valens himself perishing in battle. This event marked a turning point, signaling that Rome's military supremacy could no longer guarantee security against determined and organized opponents. Economic pressures exacerbated the empire's vulnerability. Maintaining legions along extended borders required vast financial resources, while the central treasury often struggled to meet the demands of defense, public works, and administrative needs. In response, the empire increasingly relied on recruiting barbarian mercenaries into its armies. While this strategy provided temporary manpower, it also introduced new risks. Loyalty was sometimes divided, command structures became more complex, and cultural differences occasionally created friction within the military ranks. The integration of non-Roman forces, while necessary for survival, revealed the empire's dependence on pragmatic but imperfect solutions. External threats were not limited to the north. In the east, Persia posed a persistent challenge, with successive Sasanian kings engaging in raids, invasions, and border skirmishes. The Roman-Persian frontier was a region of constant tension, demanding vigilance, diplomacy, and military readiness. These pressures forced Rome to allocate significant resources away from other areas, sometimes leaving provinces vulnerable to internal unrest or opportunistic invasions. The empire's ability to simultaneously defend multiple fronts became an enduring test of leadership, strategy, and organizational capacity. Barbarian migrations were often spurred by pressures outside Rome's control. Climatic changes, population movements, and conflicts among tribes displaced groups who then sought refuge or land within the empire's borders. The Huns, under the leadership of Attila, exemplified this dynamic. Their movement across Central Europe displaced countless peoples, many of whom pressed into Roman territories, sometimes violently.
The Huns themselves launched devastating campaigns that threatened even the heart of the Western Empire, demonstrating the interconnectedness of external pressures and the fragility of imperial borders. In response to these crises, Roman leaders attempted both military and diplomatic strategies. Fortifications were strengthened, legions were redeployed, and alliances were forged with some tribes to counter others. Treaties, tribute payments, and strategic marriages were employed to secure peace or delay conflict. Yet these measures were often temporary solutions to structural problems. Rome's administrative and military systems were strained, and the empire's capacity to absorb repeated shocks began to decline. What had once been a vast, cohesive entity was increasingly fragmented under the pressures of external threats and internal complexity. The social impact of barbarian invasions was profound. As invasions and migrations intensified, local populations often experienced displacement, loss of property, and disruption of traditional economic systems. Cities were sometimes sacked, agricultural production interrupted, and trade networks destabilized. These disruptions weakened not only the economy but also the morale of Roman citizens, eroding confidence in imperial authority and encouraging further unrest, both within the borders and among potential invaders. Cultural integration, once a strength, now faced new challenges. The influx of barbarian populations introduced diverse customs, beliefs, and languages into the empire. While Rome had historically absorbed conquered peoples, the scale and rapidity of these migrations strained the mechanisms of integration. Conflicts between traditional Roman citizens and newcomers sometimes erupted, reflecting the complexities of maintaining a unified identity in a rapidly changing social landscape. Despite these mounting pressures, Rome demonstrated remarkable resilience. Leaders adapted strategies, reformed military practices, and sought alliances that temporarily stabilized regions. Yet these challenges foreshadowed deeper structural weaknesses. The combination of relentless external threats, economic strain, and social transformation marked a period of crisis that would shape the trajectory of the empire for centuries to come. As we reflect on this era, it becomes evident that the Roman Empire, while formidable, was not impervious. The pressures of defending extensive borders, managing diverse populations, and responding to unpredictable migrations and invasions revealed the inherent vulnerabilities of even the most powerful states. In the next segment, we will examine the further decline of the Western Roman Empire, the fall of key cities, and the eventual transition into a new era of history.
By the late 4th and early 5th centuries CE, the Western Roman Empire, once the unchallenged powerhouse of Europe and the Mediterranean, faced unprecedented challenges that threatened its very existence. Centuries of expansion, conquest, and cultural integration had created a vast and complex empire, but the very factors that fueled its growth now contributed to its decline. Political instability, economic strain, military crises, and social unrest combined to weaken the structures that had once upheld Rome's supremacy. Leadership failures became a critical issue during this period. Unlike earlier eras when strong and visionary emperors like Augustus or Trajan guided the empire, the Western Roman Empire increasingly suffered from ineffective rulers. Emperors were often young, inexperienced, or installed by powerful generals who sought to manipulate imperial authority for their own ends. This lack of stable and competent leadership eroded confidence among citizens, soldiers, and provincial governors. Decisions were frequently short-sighted, reactive, or influenced by personal ambition rather than the broader needs of the empire. Internal decay manifested in multiple ways. Corruption among officials became rampant, with governors and tax collectors exploiting the provinces for personal gain. Civic institutions, once vibrant centers of law, commerce, and public life, suffered from neglect or mismanagement. Urban centers, which had previously thrived as hubs of culture and trade, experienced declining infrastructure, reduced economic activity, and a diminishing population. The administrative machinery that had enabled Rome to govern a vast territory struggled under the pressures of bureaucracy, fiscal deficits, and social unrest. Rome's economy,
once the backbone of its power, now faced persistent challenges that made it increasingly difficult to sustain both the army and the administrative state. The sack of Rome in 410 CE by the Visigoths, led by King Alaric, was a symbolic and shocking event that demonstrated the vulnerability of the Western Empire. Rome, the Eternal City, had withstood centuries of threats, but now it was violated by a foreign army. Citizens faced destruction, looting, and displacement. The psychological impact of the sack was profound, shaking the confidence of both the populace and the broader empire. It was a stark reminder that the Western Roman Empire, despite its grandeur, could no longer guarantee security for its heartland. Military crises continued to plague the Western Empire. The legions, once disciplined and loyal, were often stretched thin across vast territories. Recruitment became more difficult, and the reliance on barbarian mercenaries, while necessary, introduced new risks within the military. These forces sometimes acted independently or in their own interest, further undermining imperial authority. Borders, which had once been tightly controlled, were increasingly penetrated by migrating tribes seeking land, resources, or refuge. The combination of internal decay and external pressure created a precarious situation where even small crises could escalate into significant threats to stability. Social unrest was another symptom of decline. Inequalities between the wealthy elite and the urban poor intensified. Citizens, burdened by taxes and diminishing economic opportunities, grew disillusioned with imperial authority. The influx of refugees and migrants from border regions created tensions in urban centers, challenging traditional social structures and creating new conflicts. Public morale declined, and the once vibrant civic life that had characterized Rome's peak suffered greatly. Leadership struggles also played a role in the Western Empire's decline. Emperors were often appointed or deposed by military factions rather than emerging through stable political processes. This cycle of rapid succession, intrigue, and assassinations weakened continuity in governance. Policies were inconsistent, reforms were short-lived, and long-term planning became nearly impossible. In this environment, local governors and military commanders sometimes acted independently, further fragmenting authority and diminishing central control. Despite these challenges, remnants of Roman civilization persisted. The empire's legal system, engineering feats, cultural achievements, and urban networks continued to influence daily life and governance. However, the Western Roman Empire's inability to adapt effectively to the cumulative pressures of internal decay, leadership failures, economic strain, and external invasions signaled that the decline was not temporary, but part of a larger, inevitable transformation. The fall of key cities, including Rome, signaled a profound shift in European history. What had once been a symbol of enduring power and civilization became a contested landscape of emerging kingdoms, migrating tribes, and fragmented authority. The Western Roman Empire, while still influential in legacy, had entered the final stages of its existence. As we move forward, we will examine the transition from the Western Roman Empire to the early medieval period, the survival of the Eastern Roman Empire, and the enduring legacy of Rome in law, culture, and governance.
While the Western Roman Empire was succumbing to internal decay and external invasions, the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, continued to thrive. Centered in Constantinople, a city strategically located on the Bosporus Strait, the Eastern Empire benefited from strong defenses, economic wealth, and a sophisticated bureaucracy that allowed it to survive when its Western counterpart faltered. The story of the Byzantine Empire demonstrates not only the resilience of Roman traditions, but also the adaptation and evolution of Roman governance, culture, and military strategy in response to new challenges. Constantinople, founded by Emperor Constantine in 330 CE, became the political, economic, and cultural heart of the Eastern Empire. Its massive walls, strategic harbor, and commanding location allowed the city to withstand numerous sieges, earning a reputation as one of the most fortified cities in history. The Byzantines understood the importance of geography, combining natural defenses with architectural ingenuity. Unlike Rome in the West, which faced repeated invasions, Constantinople's fortifications provided both security and a platform for projecting imperial power across the Eastern Mediterranean. The Byzantine Empire preserved many Roman institutions while also innovating. Administration was highly centralized, with a complex hierarchy of officials managing taxation, justice, and provincial governance. The emperor wielded supreme authority, but the system also relied on capable bureaucrats, military commanders, and advisors who ensured continuity in governance. This administrative efficiency allowed the Eastern Empire to manage a diverse population that included Greeks, Armenians, Syrians, Egyptians, and peoples from the Balkans, maintaining order and stability across a vast region. Economically, the Byzantine Empire thrived on trade and commerce. Constantinople's location at the crossroads of Europe and Asia made it a hub for goods, ideas, and culture. Markets were filled with spices, silks, precious metals, and luxury items imported from distant lands. The empire's control over key trade routes, including access to the Mediterranean and the Silk Road, ensured a steady flow of wealth, which funded the military, public works, and cultural projects. This economic vitality distinguished the Eastern Empire from its Western counterpart, which had experienced declining trade and economic instability. Culturally, the Byzantines developed a unique synthesis of Roman, Greek, and Christian traditions. Christianity, which had been gradually embraced throughout the Roman world, became the official religion under Emperor Theodosius I, and it deeply influenced art, law, and governance. Iconography, mosaics, and architecture flourished, with landmarks such as the Hagia Sophia exemplifying the empire's artistic and engineering achievements. Byzantine culture preserved classical learning, including philosophy, literature, and science, while also contributing new innovations that would influence Europe for centuries. The Byzantine military was adapted to new threats and challenges. Unlike the Western legions, which struggled with loyalty and recruitment, the Byzantine army employed professional soldiers, fortified cities, and innovative tactics. The use of Greek fire, mobile cavalry units, and strategic diplomacy allowed the empire to resist invasions by Persians, Arabs, Slavs, and later Ottoman Turks. Military service was often tied to land grants and civic duty, ensuring a connection between the army and local communities. This adaptability was crucial for the empire's survival over many centuries. Religion played a central role in Byzantine society and governance. The emperor was seen as God's representative on earth, blending political authority with spiritual leadership. The church influenced law, education, and public morality, while monasteries became centers of learning and cultural preservation. Religious festivals, rituals, and theological debates shaped everyday life, while icons and religious art reinforced the spiritual and political unity of the empire. Christianity became a defining characteristic of Byzantine identity, distinguishing it from both pagan Rome and the emerging powers of Western Europe. Despite its resilience, the Byzantine Empire faced ongoing challenges. Internal power struggles, court intrigues, and succession disputes occasionally weakened the state. Economic pressures, including taxation and resource management, required careful attention. External threats remained constant, as neighboring peoples sought to challenge Byzantine authority or exploit moments of weakness. Yet through strategic governance, military innovation, and cultural cohesion, the Eastern Empire endured for nearly 1,000 years after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The legacy of the Byzantine Empire is profound. It preserved Roman law through the Codex Justinianus, influenced European political thought, and transmitted classical knowledge to the Islamic world, and later to Renaissance Europe. Its artistic achievements, architectural innovations, and literary works enriched global culture. The survival of the Eastern Empire demonstrates how adaptability, centralized governance, and cultural integration can sustain a civilization even amid external pressures and internal challenges. As we reflect on this remarkable chapter, it becomes evident that the Roman legacy was far from extinguished with the fall of the West. Through the Byzantine Empire, Roman law, culture, religion, and administrative principles continued to shape the world, providing a bridge between the ancient and medieval periods. In the next segment, we will explore Rome's enduring influence on law, governance, architecture, and culture in post-Roman Europe and beyond.
Even after the fall of the Western Roman Empire and the eventual transformation of the Eastern Roman Empire into the Byzantine Empire, the legacy of Rome continued to shape the world. Roman achievements in law, governance, architecture, and culture created a foundation upon which modern civilizations were built. Understanding Rome's enduring influence requires examining the various domains in which Roman innovations left an indelible mark. One of Rome's most profound contributions was in the field of law. Roman law, codified and systematized over centuries, became a model for legal systems throughout Europe and beyond. The Codex Justinianus, compiled under Emperor Justinian in the 6th century, preserved centuries of legal thought, decisions, and principles. Concepts such as contracts, property rights, torts, and legal citizenship were meticulously documented and transmitted across generations. These principles influenced the development of civil law traditions in countries such as Italy, France, Spain, and Germany, forming the backbone of legal systems that govern millions of people today. The Roman emphasis on written law, due process, and equality before the law provided a blueprint for justice and governance that transcended the empire itself. Governance was another domain where Rome's influence endured. The Roman model of centralized authority, balanced with administrative delegation, inspired future states to adopt similar structures. Concepts such as senatorial councils, civic magistracies, and codified bureaucratic procedures informed the development of European monarchies, republics, and even modern democratic institutions. The idea that governance required a combination of legal frameworks, civic participation, and professional administration traces back to Roman practices. Even the architecture of modern parliaments, courthouses, and civic buildings reflects Roman organizational and symbolic principles, reinforcing the continuity of political thought. Architecturally, Rome set standards that are still admired and emulated. Monumental structures such as aqueducts, amphitheaters, bridges, and roads demonstrated not only engineering skill, but also the ability to organize labor, materials, and logistics on an unprecedented scale. The use of arches, vaults, and domes, perfected in Roman construction, became fundamental elements in later European architecture. Buildings such as the Pantheon, with its massive dome ceiling, or the Colosseum, with its innovative design and functionality, remain symbols of human ingenuity. Roman urban planning with grid layouts, forums, and public spaces influenced medieval and modern city designs, emphasizing both utility and aesthetics. Culturally, Rome left a profound imprint on language, literature, and the arts. Latin, the language of Rome, became the foundation for Romance languages, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian, and served as the lingua franca of educated Europeans for centuries. Roman literature, philosophy, and historical writings influenced generations of scholars, writers, and statesmen. Figures such as Cicero, Virgil, and Seneca inspired Renaissance thinkers, shaping European literature, rhetoric, and ethical thought. Art and sculpture, emphasizing realism, proportion, and idealized forms, informed Western artistic traditions, creating a continuum of visual culture that persists today. Military strategy and organization also contributed to Rome's enduring legacy. The structure of legions, logistics of supply chains, and principles of discipline and training were studied and adapted by later military leaders across Europe. The Romans' ability to combine infantry, cavalry, engineering, and strategic planning became a reference point for military education and doctrine. Roman roads, fortified boundaries, and infrastructure not only served military purposes, but also facilitated commerce, communication, and cultural integration, reinforcing the empire's long-term influence. Religious and philosophical contributions further extended Rome's impact. Christianity, which emerged during the Roman Empire and eventually became the state religion, shaped European civilization for centuries. Roman law, organization, and cultural practices provided a framework for the church to govern, administer, and spread its influence.
Additionally, Roman philosophical traditions, including Stoicism and Epicureanism, informed ethical and intellectual thought across Europe, contributing to the moral and philosophical foundations of Western society. Education and literacy, hallmarks of Roman civilization, played a vital role in transmitting knowledge across generations. Roman schools, libraries, and institutions fostered learning in rhetoric, law, literature, and science. The preservation and study of classical texts during the Middle Ages and Renaissance were possible largely because of the meticulous recording and transmission initiated in Roman times. This intellectual legacy helped shape the foundations of modern humanities, law, and governance, bridging ancient and contemporary worlds. Even today, Rome's influence is evident in political structures, legal systems, architecture, urban planning, language, and culture. From the capitals of Europe to the administrative centers of the Americas, traces of Roman innovation can be identified in the organization of government, codification of law, and the design of cities. Roman ideals of citizenship, civic duty, and public service continued to inspire democratic institutions and civic engagement around the world. In reflecting on Rome's legacy, it becomes apparent that the empire's influence extends far beyond military conquest or territorial expansion. Rome shaped the intellectual, cultural, and institutional foundations of Western civilization. The principles of law, governance, architecture, military organization, and cultural integration that emerged in ancient Rome continue to guide societies, institutions, and individuals today. As we transition to our final segment, we will explore the ultimate lessons from Rome's rise, peak, and transformation, and how modern civilizations can draw wisdom from its history.
The story of Rome, from its humble beginnings along the Tiber River to its vast imperial dominance across Europe, North Africa, and the Near East, offers invaluable lessons about power, resilience, and the human condition. Rome's rise was fueled by vision, strategy, and an ability to integrate diverse peoples, while its decline exposed the vulnerabilities inherent in any civilization, regardless of its military strength or cultural achievements. Reflecting on this grand narrative allows us to draw insights that are relevant not only to historians, but also to leaders, policymakers, and citizens today. One of the most significant lessons from Rome's rise is the importance of adaptability. The early republic demonstrated remarkable flexibility in governance, balancing the powers of patricians and plebeians, integrating conquered peoples, and innovating in law and military organization. Rome's ability to adjust its institutions, strategies, and policies to meet the demands of growth enabled it to expand far beyond what many contemporaries considered possible. This adaptability extended to culture and society as well. By accommodating local customs, religions, and elites, Rome maintained cohesion across diverse territories. Modern societies, organizations, and governments can learn from Rome's example that survival and growth often depend on the capacity to respond creatively and pragmatically to changing circumstances. Military strategy and discipline were central to Rome's success, yet the empire's decline highlights the dangers of overextension. Legions that had once conquered the known world eventually faced challenges defending vast, vulnerable borders. The lesson is clear. While strength is necessary for security and influence, unchecked expansion without sustainable infrastructure, logistics, and administrative support can lead to systemic strain. Leaders today can draw parallels in organizational, political, or economic contexts. Ambition must be balanced with capacity, and growth must be managed carefully to prevent collapse. The role of governance, law, and institutional integrity emerges as another key lesson. Rome's sophisticated legal system, structured bureaucracy, and codified norms provided stability for centuries. However, corruption, nepotism, and weak leadership in the later empire undermined these structures. Internal decay often proved more dangerous than external threats, demonstrating that the strength of institutions and the quality of leadership are critical for any enduring civilization. Modern parallels abound as societies must ensure accountability, transparency, and ethical governance to maintain trust and stability. Economists, management, and social cohesion were equally crucial. Rome's wealth from trade, conquest, and agriculture funded its military and public works, but economic inequality, taxation pressures, and reliance on mercenary forces contributed to instability. Social unrest fueled by disparities between elite and common citizens and the pressures of displaced populations further tested the empire. The lesson is that prosperity alone is insufficient. Equitable distribution, social welfare, and engagement with the needs of citizens or constituents are essential for long-term stability. Societies today face similar challenges, making Rome's experiences strikingly relevant. Another profound insight comes from Rome's cultural and intellectual legacy. The empire demonstrated that enduring influence is not solely measured by political power, but also by contributions to knowledge, law, art, and philosophy. Latin language, literature, legal principles, architectural innovations, and urban planning continue to shape modern civilizations. This reminds us that investing in education, culture, and the preservation of knowledge is as important as military or economic achievements, for these contributions endure long after political structures fade. The story of the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, further emphasizes the value of resilience and adaptation. While the Western Empire succumbed to internal decay and barbarian invasions, the Eastern Empire thrived for a nearly millennium longer. Its survival owed much to strategic geography, centralized administration, cultural cohesion, and military innovation. The lesson is that foresight, strategic planning, and cultural unity can sustain societies through crises, even in the face of formidable challenges. Rome's eventual decline also underscores the consequences of neglecting internal cohesion. Leadership instability, succession crises, economic strain, and corruption created vulnerabilities that external forces could exploit. The fall of the Western Roman Empire illustrates that power is transient if it is not supported by strong institutions, capable leadership, and engaged citizens. This remains a timeless lesson for nations, organizations, and communities today. Sustainability requires attention to both internal health and external challenges. Despite the empire's fall, Rome's story is not merely one of decline. It is a testament to human achievement, resilience, and creativity. Its law, architecture, culture, and administrative practices continue to inspire and inform modern society. From the Renaissance to contemporary governance, the Roman legacy serves as a bridge between antiquity and the present, reminding us that the lessons of history can guide future generations in leadership, civic responsibility, and cultural preservation. As we conclude this journey through the rise, peak, and transformation of Rome, we are reminded that history is not just a record of events, but a source of wisdom. The triumphs, challenges, and failures of Rome offer insights into leadership, governance, social cohesion, and human resilience. By studying Rome, we gain perspective on the cyclical nature of power, the importance of adaptation, and the enduring impact of culture, law, and innovation. If you enjoyed this exploration of Rome's incredible story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest videos and join us on the journey through the fascinating history of civilizations. Let Rome's story inspire